Hi everyone and welcome to Studio Jake. Just to warn you, I'm going to apologize in advance because it's raining today, and since it's raining, people have forgotten how to drive in LA, and so you'll hear you might hear someone speed by my homestead very loudly, or hear honking, or sometimes even crashing, though I don't think there's an actual auto accident. So I'm going to apologize in advance for that. Be sure to like this video, share it out whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, and if you are on YouTube, subscribe to this channel, but also ring the bell and turn on all notifications, because YouTube does this weird thing where they curate your subscription feed. It's kind of annoying for us creators because you, even though you subscribe to our channel, won't see everything exactly the way you're supposed to in chronological order, right? Instead, they curate it based on your likes and comments. So be sure to turn on all notifications. That way you get alerts. If you're on Facebook, do the same thing. Like this page and turn on all notifications. That way you know every time I post something, and so much more. Now, today we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. Today is the birthday of Chuck Norris. Who is Chuck Norris, for some of you millennials who may not remember? Chuck Norris is a TV action star. He's also a I should say an action movie icon. He's done so many movies in kind of the days of the what they called the electric boogaloo, which was high action films. They didn't have like a lot of in the way of connecting to the character. It was all about the action, it was all about the plot, and Chuck Norris was in many of these. I have seen every single Chuck Norris film. I've watched every single episode of Walker, Texas Ranger, including the movies that came out after the show had ended, which I said movies. There was only one, so I saw the movie, the reunion movie, and it ended off on a cliffhanger. It was very frustrating. So he's one of my all-time favorite actors. I've been following his career probably since I was in the first grade. Just an incredible action hero. And my parents let me watch a lot of his films because after he became a Christian, while his films remained violent, he kind of toned down, because a lot of his early movies had what you would consider like sexual content, and it had a lot of extreme foul language, basically. But after he became a Christian, he started to tone that down, and it became more about just the action in general. So my parents would always let me watch his movies post his conversion to Christianity, and I just got a taste for his amazing roundhouse kicks. For those of you who aren't familiar, unlike a lot of these celebrity martial artists, so like Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jean-Claude Van Damme has a very small fight record. I believe he only has 6 officially recorded fights. Chuck Norris, on the other hand, has over 100, and he is, I believe, the 5-time karate champion of the world. He was one of the first. Now, there's some dispute over whether he actually was the first or not, but he was at least one of the first Americans to achieve the level of 4th degree black belt, I believe. And he originally got his black belt in Tang Soo Do, which is a Korean style of karate, and then he went on to adapt karate more practically because it was more popular in the United States. And then later he actually studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the Gracie family. And again, for those of you unfamiliar, the Gracies, they practically founded modern mixed martial arts, combining Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with punches and kicking, making a very deadly martial art, and Chuck Norris was part of that. So I am going to give you today, like I said, to do a little bit differently and to say happy birthday to Chuck Norris. I'm going to give you my top 10 favorite Chuck Norris film quotes. With that in mind, sit back, relax, and welcome to Studio Jake. As I stated before, Chuck Norris might be semi-retired from acting, but his martial arts skills wowed audiences on the silver screen before delivering roundhouse kicks on the hit action television series Walker, Texas Rangers. During those years, that's the Walker, Texas Rangers, and prior, he delivered some memorable lines that have become ingrained in American culture. While there are so many, I'm going to share my personal top 10 favorite Chuck Norris film quotes. So Chuck Norris was in, this is one of his most critically acclaimed film. It was called The Delta Force. It was based on a real story about an airliner that got hijacked and by radical Islamic terrorists. They took hostages and then they landed in the Middle East, I believe in Lebanon, and they actually released all the women but kept the men hostages. And at one point they let anyone who wasn't a Jew go, but they held the Jews who were on the plane hostage. And so Chuck Norris plays um, a Delta Force officer, and he's partnered with another one who is played by Lee Marvin. And like I said, this one was one of Chuck Norris's most critically acclaimed films. It was really well made, had a great cast. Robert Vaughn was in the cast, amazing actor. So during all of this, there's a scene where when the Delta Force infiltrate the infiltrate the base of the terrorists, Chuck Norris hides under one of the beds in their cell, and a terrorist comes in and hears a noise, and so he pulls over because it's like a thin like mattress, and he pulls it up, and Chuck Norris is there, and he shoots the guy with his machine gun, and says, "Sleep tight, sucker." It's a really great line. This one was actually kind of hard to. That one has so many great one-liners. There's just one scene where his motorbike that he has a rocket propelled grenade, but it's a miniature one. It's not like a big bazooka, and he like beats up a terrorist, and as he's driving away, he shoots and blows him up. It's a great scene. But there's another line in there where he walks into the terrorist communication room, and he fights them all and kills them all, and one of the head terrorists comes on the radio and is saying, "American, I want to negotiate. Do you hear me, American?" And Chuck Norris responds, "I heard you," and then just opens fires with machine gun. But I didn't know exactly how to put that in text because I also have this list on my blog, but "Sleep tight, sucker," it works for me. So number 9 is from the film Lone Wolf McQuade. Now Chuck Norris had been in the movie Return of the Dragon, as it was called in America. I think in China it was called Way of the Dragon. And Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee were really good friends. Both of them were represented different types of martial arts. Chuck Norris was strength, Bruce Lee was skill, and they had a private fight after they had met, but Bruce Lee never said who won the fight, and Chuck Norris did talk about it in his autobiography, but he never mentioned it. So Lone Wolf, and so in Way of the Dragon, Chuck Norris, his character, spoiler alert, he actually gets killed by Bruce Lee. And like I said, at the time, Chuck Norris, he was a popular martial arts master. He had won a ton of tournaments, had been the U.S. American champion. So Lone Wolf McQuade was kind of his chance to kind of be in a martial arts film where he could face off against another popular martial artist, in this case David Carradine, who played a domestic terrorist. And I think his nickname is Mad Dog in the film, and they have a fight. And there's a scene where McQuade is talking to, I think, his partner, and he says, "My kind of trouble doesn't take vacations," because his partner, I want to say it's his partner, it's another cop, says, because he plays a cop in the film, a Texas Ranger actually. He says maybe he took a vacation, and Wolf McQuade says, "My kind of trouble doesn't take a vacation." It's a really great film. One interesting thing about it is David Carradine refused to be killed on scene because Chuck Norris won it like I said, in Way of the Dragon. Chuck Norris gets killed because Bruce Lee breaks his neck. Not obviously real, for those of you who in the comments who don't know the difference. But so that's how he wanted to kill David Carradine, and David Carradine actually refused to be filmed on screen dying, and so they wrote it in where Chuck Norris blows up his house instead. So it was a shame because I would have liked to have seen that. So this next one comes from Missing in Action to the Beginning. Now, I actually found out Missing in Action is a trilogy that Chuck Norris did. The first film um, is Chuck Norris's character. He finds out that some of his old unit and other troops are still captured in Vietnam, and the Vietnam government is denying this, so he sneaks in. And then the second one is actually shows him in a POW camp during the Vietnam War being tortured by this sadistic, crazy Viet Cong commander. Now, a lot of people have said, oh, we don't like this movie because it demonizes the Viet Cong. Viet Cong were evil. Like, I'm not talking about just their regular troops, but their generals and their commanders were evil what they did to the POW criminals. I mean, Jane Fonda, obviously, they manipulated Jane Fonda, or should I say Hanoi Jane, into, basically endorsing them. So, I mean, these guys were evil. And there's a scene where when the war's over and the POWs are being released, Chuck Norris's character kind of goes back to confront um, the Viet Cong commander, and he says, "You really didn't think I'd leave without making sure you were dead." It's a great line in the film. He delivers it so well. I love it. So number 7 comes courtesy of Invasion USA. Now, what's kind of funny about Invasion USA is on the poster it has like cityscapes on it. It's Chuck Norris. It's the famous one where Chuck Norris is standing and he's got 2 Uzis in his hand. His shirt's unbuttoned and he's wearing blue jeans. What's interesting, and then on his right is Washington D.C. and on his left is New York City. Those cities are not even shown in the movie, which is kind of funny. But the movie is actually a very serious film where these communists infiltrate, I believe, Miami. It's either Miami or Orlando. I can't remember. And they start basically causing dissent. So they'll have, instead of doing like a traditional invasion where they come in as an army and take a city, what they do is they basically start riots. They have men dressed up as policemen go and shoot minorities, so then the minorities attack the police. It's very, very intricate, and there's a great scene where they capture one of the terrorists, and Chuck Norris starts basically beating him up to get information from him. And he says, if you come back in, I'll hit you with so many rights you'll be begging for a left. Great line, incredibly great Chuck Norris. There's also a more serious line where he tells the bad guy, time to die, and then later he tells one of the bad guy's lackeys the same thing, and so the lackey knows that Chuck Norris is coming. And I do like that line, but this one is just really good because it's, that 80s action flair. So number 6 comes from The Octagon. Now this one is about this terrorist who had trained in ninjutsu in Japan, and then he started basically a training center for terrorists, teaching them the way of the ninja. And so Chuck Norris plays an American agent sent in to stop them basically. And they're because they're basically, these guys are working together to commit acts of terrorist, so there could be less connection and whatnot. So there's this great line: if winning overshadows everything, why didn't you teach one of us to lose? Great line. Chuck Norris delivers it so well in the film, and I just think it's fantastic. Now, number 5 comes from Forced Vengeance, where they're looking for the bad guy, they can't find him, and so Chuck Norris says, if I was a tree, I'd hide in a forest, as in, we need to find this guy where he would be where he would be more likely to be found because he's this bad guy. And they're like, surely he wouldn't go here. He says, if I was a tree, I'd hide in a forest. Number 4 is from The Hitman. This film is actually really good. It's about Chuck Norris plays this cop who everyone thinks is dead, and so the police create a new identity for him and allow him to infiltrate the mafia. And he tells, I think, a boy, one of his neighbor's sons, running from your fear is more painful than facing it. It's a that this film is actually really dark for even some of his older Chuck Norris films. It's a really dark film. It's really good, really well made, very brutal. So sequel to Delta Force 2. It's gone through so many names. It was I think when it was released, it was called Operation Stranglehold. Later, it was called The Meat Connection. I think they called it that when it was released on VHS, but then when it was released on DVD, they called it The Columbia Connection. It's about a Colombian drug lord. Instead of a radical Islamic terrorist, it's about a Colombian drug lord. And there's a part where they want to infiltrate the Delta Force. They want to infiltrate his base, and um, one of the subordinates mentions that the mountain has 3 sides. And Chuck Norris replies, most mountains have 4 sides. Great line, just shows that practical common sense way of fighting. So number 2, this comes from Braddock, Mission and Action 3. Now this one was very different than the first two. The first one, like I said, was about Chuck Norris rescuing POW soldiers. The second one was a prequel that showed Chuck Norris's character named Braddock, as he was captured himself during the Vietnam War. And Missing in Action 3 takes place years after the war, and he finds out that his wife is still alive. And so, because he thought he had in a flashback, you find out he had married a Vietnamese woman, and he thought she was dead because he goes to save her, to bring her back during the evacuation, and their apartment explodes, and he sees a person with a bracelet that resembled the bracelet he had given his wife, so he thought she was dead. So he finds out she's still alive, and he wants to go in, and sort of this high-ranking intelligence official tells him not to go and not to step on toes. And so he responds, I don't step on toes, I step on necks. Great line. It was delivered so well. And I actually heard him say this in Walker, Texas Ranger. He likes to repeat, in Walker, Texas Ranger, he repeated a lot of his iconic movie lines, especially when they became popular in pop culture. So my number 1 is from the film Code of Silence. I love this movie. Code of Silence is a fantastic, fantastic film. It's one of his best one. He plays a cop named Eddie Cusack in Chicago, and Code of Silence refers to this thing where you don't talk about other cops who have done bad things. You don't talk about it. You keep it a secret because everyone bleeds blue when you're on the police force. But what happens is another cop actually murders an innocent teenager. And now Chuck Norris's character didn't witness it, but he refused to testify on the guy's behalf. And so the rest of the cops get mad at him, and they won't help him solve this crime. So he actually goes to this bar where cops are hated. It's full of bad guys and scum and lowlives, and he walks in by himself. And one of the bad guys basically says, hey, are you in the wrong place? You need to get out of here." And then Chuck Norris responds, "When I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you." It's a really good movie, and again, he repeats this one in an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger. Fantastic line. It's probably the most Chuck Norris line. So anyway, that's all the time I have for today. I just wanted to share that. Wish Chuck Norris a happy birthday. Thank you for bringing us a ton of great flicks, a ton of great action movies. I really appreciate it. I hope one day I actually get to meet you in person, make that happen. So without further ado, be sure to follow me on social media. My Facebook is author Jacob Berry. My YouTube channel is StudioJake. My Instagram, Twitter, and Parler, they're all at real Jacob Berry, so you can follow me on all of those. And of course, you can find more of my writings on my blog. That's jacoberry.blog, and it's got book reviews, movie reviews, comic book reviews. I share celebrity news, a lot of stuff that has to do with nerd stuff and anime. Definitely head over there and check it out, and also get a copy of my fantasy novel, The Seven Royals, All Good Things. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, all the online versions of these stores. You can also get it off you can also get it on Kobo if you like Rakuten, and you can get it directly from my publisher in paperback or digital copy at booklocker.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.